Before there were heroes, before there were monsters, before there were temples, or oracles, or anybody writing anything down, there was a war. Not a war between nations, not a war between ideas, a war between generations of gods that shook the foundations of existence itself and decided, once and for all, what kind of universe this was going to be. This is the War of the Titans, and it starts, like most catastrophic things do, with a father who can't let go. Let's set the scene. In the very beginning, there was chaos. Not chaos like a crowded airport or your cousin's wedding. Chaos as in the yawning void before anything existed. Out of that void came the first beings. Gaia, the earth. Uranus, the sky. Primordial, vast, barely even conscious in the way we'd recognize. More forces than beings. And from their union came the first great family of gods. 12 titans. 6 male, 6 female. The original divine generation. Their names are worth saying out loud at least once, because they carry the weight of everything that came before. Oceanus, Cuus, Crius, Hyperion, Iapetus, Cronus, and the Titanesses, Thea, Rhea, Themis, Mnemosyne, Phoebe, and Tethys. The Titans didn't just rule the cosmos. They were the cosmos. They personified its fundamental forces. Hyperion was the light of the sky. Mnemosyne was memory itself. Oceanus was the great world-encircling river. These weren't gods who lived somewhere up above, occasionally interfering. They were woven into the fabric of everything. But Uranus also fathered other children, and those he was considerably less enthusiastic about. The Cyclops, 3 giants with a single eye each, and the Hecatoncheires, 3 beings each with 50 heads and 100 arms. These were creatures of such overwhelming power that Uranus, terrified of what he'd made, imprisoned them, not somewhere outside, inside Gaia herself, trapped beneath the earth, inside the body of their own mother. Gaia was not happy about this. You would not be either. She forged a sickle from adamantine, the unbreakable divine metal, and went to her Titan children. She asked which of them was willing to do what needed to be done. Only one volunteered, the youngest, Cronus. What Cronus did with that sickle is, to put it gently, not suitable for a dinner party retelling. But the short version is that Uranus's reign ended that evening, loudly and permanently. Where pieces of him fell into the sea, Aphrodite would eventually be born. Where his blood touched the earth, the Furies and the giants came into being. Cronus was thorough, and so the age of the Titans began. Cronus took his sister Rhea as his queen. Together they ruled over what the ancient Greeks genuinely described as a golden age. No suffering, no hunger, no sickness. Long lives, abundant harvests, gods and mortals living in something close to harmony. By most metrics, things were going really well, except that Cronus, somewhere in the back of his divine mind, couldn't shake a warning. His mother Gaia had told him, and Uranus had echoed with his dying breath, "One of your own children will do to you what you did to your father. The cycle will continue. You will be overthrown." Now, a reasonable person might accept the inevitability of this and try to parent well. Cronus was not interested in being reasonable. His solution, which says a great deal about the quality of his judgment, was to simply eat his children, one by one. As Rhea gave birth, Cronus swallowed them. Hestia, goddess of the hearth. Demeter, goddess of the harvest. Hera, who would one day be queen of Olympus. Hades, future lord of the dead. Poseidon, who would come to rule the seas. Down they went, not dead. Exactly. Immortal gods can't really die by being swallowed, but imprisoned, in absolute darkness, inside their own father's stomach, which is arguably worse. Rhea watched all of this happen and was, understandably, done with it. When her sixth child came, she made a decision. She went to her mother Gaia and her father Uranus, and she asked for help. They gave her a plan. She traveled to the island of Crete, to a cave deep in the woods on Mount Ida, and there she gave birth secretly to a son. She handed the infant to the nymphs and to Gaia herself, who raised him in the hidden cave. Then she returned home. When Cronus came to her expecting another newborn to swallow, Rhea handed him a stone, wrapped in cloth, swaddled like a baby. He swallowed it without checking. The child's name was Zeus. He grew up in that Cretan cave, raised by the goat nymph Amalthea on milk and honey, guarded by a group of warrior priests called the Curetes who would clash their shields and spears together whenever the baby cried, to mask the sound from Cronus. So the future king of the gods spent his infancy in a cave, surrounded by men making as much noise as possible to hide his existence. Not a bad origin story when you think about it. When Zeus came of age, his mother Rhea found him and told him what he needed to know. And a titan named Metis, daughter of Oceanus, came to his aid. She prepared a mixture. Some ancient sources say it was an emetic potion. Others simply call it a trick. And Zeus brought it to his father, disguised as a cupbearer. Cronus, unsuspecting, drank. What came up was everything that had gone down. First the stone, then Poseidon, then Hades, then Hera, Demeter, and Hestia. His siblings, alive and fully grown, tumbling back into the world one by one. Immortal gods can survive a very long time in a stomach, it turns out, but they emerged from that experience with an entirely understandable amount of resentment toward their father. The rebellion began immediately, but the Titans were not going to surrender power without a fight, and most of them lined up behind Cronus. The two sides drew their lines. The Titans gathered on Mount Othrys, their ancient fortress in the south of Thessaly. The Olympians gathered on Mount Olympus to the north. Between them stretched the whole of the ancient Greek world, and above and below them, the cosmos itself held its breath. The Titan army was formidable. Cronus commanded. His brother Iapetus fought alongside him. Hyperion, lord of heavenly light, Cuus and Crius, and leading the Titan forces in the field. The most feared of all, Atlas, son of Iapetus, a figure of immense strength and strategic brilliance, who took command of the Titan armies with the confidence of someone who had never lost. Not all Titans joined Cronus, though. Two notable defectors crossed to the Olympian side: Themis, Titaness of divine law and prophecy, who could see how this ended and chose accordingly, and her son Prometheus, who shared her foresight and had absolutely no intention of being on the losing team. Prometheus, it should be noted, had an extraordinary gift for knowing which way the wind was going to blow. This skill would come in handy for the rest of his mythological career, though it wouldn't save him from a very unpleasant situation involving an eagle later on. Zeus also had allies no one had thought to count. He went down to Tartarus, the deepest pit of existence, and found the Cyclops and the Hecatoncheires still imprisoned there, just as Uranus had left them. He broke their chains and freed them, and they remembered what it was to have sky overhead and ground beneath their feet, and they were grateful. The Cyclops went to work immediately. For Zeus, they forged the thunderbolt, a weapon of such divine destructive power that it would become the defining symbol of his reign. For Poseidon, they crafted the trident, which could shatter the earth and churn the seas. For Hades, the helmet of invisibility, so perfectly made that even gods could not perceive the wearer. The Hecatoncheires, each with 100 arms and 50 heads, each capable of hurling 300 boulders simultaneously, joined the Olympian line. Let that image sink in for a moment. Three beings, 900 arms between them, standing shoulder to shoulder. Whatever Cronus had prepared for, it was not this. The war lasted 10 years. 10 years of divine combat across the mountains and seas of the ancient world. Hesiod, the earliest poet to write about it, describes the scale in terms that are almost impossible to imagine. The earth groaned, the heavens shook, mountains trembled to their roots, the great ocean boiled. The sound of the battle reached down to Tartarus and up to the stars. Even the primordial chaos at the edge of creation reportedly stirred. This was not a war between armies. It was a collision between two definitions of existence. The Titans represented the old world, power that was absolute, inherited, unquestioned, raw natural force ruling by virtue of being first. The Olympians represented something different, something newer and, depending on your perspective, either better or simply more recognizable. Order, a hierarchy, a division of power rather than its hoarding. A cosmos governed by roles rather than brute supremacy. The turning point came in the 10th year. Gaia, who had already been on the right side of this conflict once before, advised Zeus to use everything at his disposal. He unleashed the full fury of the thunderbolt. Poseidon brought the seas and the earth itself against the Titan forces. Hades, invisible, moved unseen through the battlefield, disrupting the Titan command. And the Hecatoncheires let loose their boulders in a barrage that ancient sources describe as a storm of mountains falling from the sky. The Titans broke. One by one they fell, and one by one they were cast down into Tartarus, the same pit that had held the Cyclops and the Hecatoncheires. The chains that had bound those allies now bound the Titans. The Hecatoncheires, in a satisfying reversal, became their guards. Cronus himself was imprisoned there, though some later sources suggest that Zeus eventually relented and allowed his father to rule over the Isle of the Blessed at the far edge of the world. Whether that's mercy or just a comfortable exile depends on how you feel about the man. Atlas, for his role as the Titan field commander, received a special punishment. He was not sent to Tartarus. Instead, he was made to hold up the vault of the sky on his shoulders for eternity. Atlas still shows up in maps and globes to this day, carrying the world on his back. The ancient Greeks understood that some metaphors are too good to put down. With the war concluded, the three brothers divided existence between them. They drew lots. Zeus won the sky and became king of gods and men. Poseidon took the seas and all the waters. Hades drew the short lot and got the underworld, which sounds like a terrible deal, but was in fact a position of enormous cosmic importance. The earth itself was left common ground, belonging to no one in particular, which probably felt very fair until the humans arrived and immediately started arguing about it. The world was arranged. The Olympians took their thrones. Order, more or less, was established. But here is what the Greeks understood that we sometimes forget when we reduce this story to a simple good versus evil war. It wasn't really about good and evil. The Titans weren't villains. Several of them, like Oceanus, stayed out of the fight entirely. Themis and Prometheus fought on the winning side. Many Titanesses became mothers of Olympian gods, woven into the new order as completely as the old. What the Titan Nomachi was actually about was change, the terrifying, violent, necessary process by which one era ends and another begins. Cronus did to Uranus what Zeus did to Cronus. The cycle that Uranus feared, that Cronus feared, that Zeus would spend the rest of his mythological career trying to prevent, kept going. The universe, as the Greeks told it, does not stay still. Power does not pass peacefully, and every established order was once, itself, the revolution. The Olympians won not because they were good. They won because the cosmos was ready to become something more ordered, more defined. more human in its logic and its conflicts. The gods of Olympus are petty and jealous and passionate and brilliant. They look, in other words, a lot like us. Maybe that was the point all along.